A very warm good evening to all of you. Welcome to the 148th session of CENTA's webinar series for teachers. I hope all of you are keeping safe and staying healthy. We are bringing to you a very interesting webinar today on bringing the augmented reality into the classrooms. We have with us today Mr. Mitch W. Mitch co-founded Academic Business Advisors in 2005, which helps organizations develop business strategies to align their products and services to the ways of purchasing decisions are made and technology is used in schools. In 2014, Mitch co-founded EdChat Interactive with Tom Whitby and Steve Anderson, a service to share best practices amongst educators through live online interactive sessions. In January 2015, Mitch co-founded the nonprofit Games for Ed with Larry Coco to facilitate collaborations between educators, researchers, game developers, publishers, and policymakers to further the use of games and other immersive strategies in school. Mitch served on the board of EdTech Industry Network (ETIN) of the SIIA from 2012 to 2019, was co-chair from 2015 to 2016, and was chair in 2019. Mitch is COO, which is Chief Operating Officer of 3D Bear Inc., the US subsidiary of 3D Bear OY, which is a Finnish edtech company co-founded to combine Finnish education practices with 3D technologies. Welcome, Mitch, and I hand over the session to you.
Well, thank you, Simran, and good evening to everybody. It's actually I'm coming to you from the U.S. I'm just outside of Washington right now, and it's morning here, but I understand that it's evening in India, and I had no idea that there were 148 other sessions in the CENTA webinar series. So, I'm honored to be here. And I do want to really thank all of you for coming, because I know that this year has been a really difficult year for all of us, but especially for teachers. The things that you all have had to do over the last 2 years outside of your comfort zone, adapting to new situations. It's been a really difficult 2 years, and for you to take an hour of your time and for this webinar is very gratifying. So thank you all for being here, and I will try to make your time worthwhile. Let me share my screen, and let me go into slideshow mode here, so it's a little bit easier to see. And there we are. So I'm here to talk to you and introduce you to 3D Bear, and also introduce you to the CENTA Masterclass, which is starting next week. And the title of the masterclass is going to be Bringing Augmented Reality to Your Classroom with 3D Bear. And this QR code on the right, and we'll show this at the end as well, is a link that will take you to the registration page for the class. And then the link on the bottom is also, if you don't have a mobile device so you can't see the QR code, this is what you would type in order to go to the class. This is going to be 4 90-minute sessions, and we'll go to it we'll describe it more in the end. But basically, the philosophy behind 3D Bear is that we're not just talking about a technology to introduce in the class, because you have a lot of technologies that you could theoretically bring into the class. We're talking really about a way to engage students in the process of learning, so that they're motivated to do the hard work, and hopefully the fun hard work that it takes to really learn deeply. And I want to thank CENTA for working with us to develop this academy, to really focus not just on the technology, but on the teaching techniques to allow you to reach students better. And that's the whole philosophy. The class is going to be primarily taught by Shalini Chauhan, um, and myself. But Shalini is going to be leading it, and I'm going to be assisting her. And Shalini is a headmistress at in India, who has been using 3D Bear for about 3 years with her students and her school. And she brings you may have seen her in other webinars, but she brings much more experience in front of the classroom and in front of students than I do. So she's going to be the person driving the academy. What we're going to be covering here is a quick demo of augmented reality and 3D Bear, and we're going to do that first. Then we'll talk about the idea of digital storytelling and examples of digital storytelling and as a technique for educators across the curriculum. We'll go into the philosophy behind 3D Bear pedagogy, and then we'll talk about some sample lessons that you can use with your students and open it up to questions. Also, if you have questions, you can put your questions into the chat, which is over on the right side of your screen. I see a number of you have already put in your comments. I can't really see those right now, but Shalini, who's also on your screen, can answer them, and she can unmute and alert me about where I've gone wrong, or where I haven't explained something, or where I have to be clearer. So, with that said, let me, so I'm not sure what your experiences are with augmented reality or virtual reality or the metaverse. So I'm just going to, quickly go through some of the differences. So in augmented reality, what you're doing is you have a mobile device and you're looking through the camera of your mobile device, just your cell phone or your tablet, and you're seeing the room or wherever you are. You could be in a forest, you could be in a city, you could be in a park, and you're adding things to what you see through your camera. So you're augmenting what you see. In virtual reality, you're in a closed environment. So somebody has created a picture or a virtual world. And so you don't see the real world at all. You're going through something that's completely different from what's real, or it's virtual. The metaverse really is a term that encompasses both. So with its augmented reality or its virtual reality, basically what you're doing is you're utilizing the metaverse. In augmented reality, there's two different ways of using augmented reality. In one, you use the camera, you point, and then something triggers something in 3 dimensional to pop up in the camera. This it's fun, but it's not really having the students create. In 3D Bear, what the students are doing is they are augmenting their own reality. So they're looking through the camera and they're creating scenes. And so what we're talking about in the classroom is a way of students storytelling about whatever that they're learning through digital means. So if you look at the example on the left, um, through the camera, we can see that there's a floor. The student, in this case, is describing what they've learned about selective breeding. And so you can see that in the parents, there's a black sheep or a brown sheep and a white sheep. Okay. And they've learned the difference between dominant genes and recessive genes. So you follow that through offspring 1 and offspring 2. On the right side, you can see in this case, we're looking directly at the room, in a room, and what we've placed in the room is a depiction of what we might find on Mars. So first, we pulled in some landscape from Mars. Okay, so this might be what Mars looks like. We've pulled in a rendering of the landing module from NASA that actually landed on Mars. And of course, there's an alien that the looking over what the Martian lander was. So this is kind of an example of what a student might do to use their curiosity. Like, what would have happened if, when we landed on Mars, we actually found living beings on Mars? What would that look like? So the student could tell a digital story, and they could write, they could write about it. And when you give students these types of tools that allow them to create their stories, it's really incredible the types of things that students can produce. So if you think about, so how would you use this in a lesson? So really quickly, what you if you're doing something in elementary school, what you might do is you might have students find things that begin with a certain letter, so they can find real things. Or 3D Bear comes with really millions of objects that you can use. So let's say a student has been assigned the letters A, well, A and B. So they go around their house, and they see an apple, and they put the letter A right next to the apple. And then they go around the house, and if they can't find something else beginning with an A, they go into 3D Bear and say, oh, apron begins with A. So they take a 3D object of an apron or an apricot or something else that begins with the letter A, and they pop the letter A next to it. And then they take a video or a photo of what they've just done, and they share it with the class. If each student takes different letters, then what you can do is you can combine all of these into an augmented alphabet that the students in the class have produced, that you can then showcase to the parents, to the community, to themselves. And it gives the students a certain amount of pride to know, hey, look, I just participated in creating an augmented alphabet video. One of my favorite examples is, um, I do a lot. I'm a dad. I'm actually a grandfather, um, and so as a dad, it's my job to tell bad jokes, or dad jokes. So so students could look up on the internet, look up dad jokes, and pick one, and then illustrate that in 3D Bear. So picking one off the shelf, like, what did one wall say to the other? I'll meet you at the corner. So let me go, and I'm going to shrink this and bring this. So what the students might do is they might produce something like this. Okay, so what you see from the camera, okay, is I'm looking at the camera. I have placed two walls and the text. Okay, what did one wall say to the other? And then um, well, you probably won't hear the sound because I don't know if I made system sounds available, but I created a video of it. So what did one wall say to the other? And then move the video over. I'll meet you at the corner. And so, that's the type of thing, although possibly better, because the students are going to be more creative than I am. Um, but that's the type of assignment that um, that, let me just go to and get me back in slideshare mode. That's the type of assignment that you might give to to your students. And you can see, when the students are producing things like this, and they're producing them for a valid audience, it really motivates them to get deeper and do a good job, because they want to be able to brag about what they're doing. In the process, they're learning, how to tell a story, how to write. They're learning whatever other academic topics you're teaching them in this fashion. And so let's just go through what some of those academic topics are that lend themselves to this type of teaching of, say, digital storytelling. And I don't know, and again, if you have questions, just put them into the chat, and Shalini will pop in and let me know. Okay, so what are some examples of that? In science, in many different grades, we study biomes or environments for animals. So you could have the students go out into the community and show either what type of animals can live in a certain biome, or they can make up animals, or find animals that could live in that biome or not. And then in the process of describing their scene, they're demonstrating what they know about adaptation about how, what's responsible for animals and plants to live, why those animals could survive. Okay. Students could talk about nutrition. So you could have students create healthy meals, or you could have students contrast healthy meals with unhealthy meals and create, virtual reality scenes showing different ways to eat. You could have students create their own food pyramid in augmented reality. Um, and we have lesson plans for all those things, and I'm going to show you how the lesson plans work as well. um, you could have students, if you're studying different regions or different areas around the world, you could have the students create meals from that area around the world and then showcase it to the other students, saying, hey, I'm studying um, I don't know, I'm studying the United States, and in the United States they eat fried chicken. So here's the meal with fried chicken and pecan pie and Coca-Cola, and this is why Americans are so fat, and that's because this is what they eat. So that was a joke, by the way. I told you that I'm kind of known for my bad jokes. So those are examples of how you could cover nutrition or meals and relate it to other curriculum. There's a lesson about a day a day in your life on Mars. So students, if students have to, in this lesson, understand what would it take to sustain life on Mars, and then they have to build in augmented reality a Martian colony with all the different aspects that you need in order to live on Mars. For example, there has to be a way to breathe, there has to be water, there has to be food, there has to be shelter, there has to be a way of transportation. So they build a Martian colony, and then they can take pictures. And when the NASA uh, um, um, I'm thinking lunar, but it's not lunar. The Martian lander was landed on Mars last February. That was a really popular topic, and here's some different things that students produce. Like on the left, oh my gosh, there's a dinosaur on Mars. The NASA symbol on Mars, showing off the Ingenuity, which was the first helicopter ever to fly on Mars. I know Shalini uses this example all the time, but if you think of, and you probably all know this already anyhow, but you could use the Sustainable Development Goals around any topic that you come up with. If in terms of creative writing, in terms of researching, in terms of science, in terms of math, in terms of history, in terms of social studies, in terms of science, any topic that you wanted, you could relate to the Sustainable Development Goals, and you could have the students create public service announcements or advertisements about why a certain initiative is so important or why we should be concerned, that then incorporates what you're teaching them in class. But what tying it to the Sustainable Development Goals does, and then allowing the students to create a video or tell a story about it, is it gives the students a real reason to produce it. Because it's one thing to learn about photosynthesis, but it's another thing to relate photosynthesis to deforestation, or relate photosynthesis to increased levels of carbon dioxide, which is increasing the temperature and sea levels. So, and these are topics that the kids themselves are very, very concerned about, because all kids are wondering, what's the world going to be like when I'm an adult, and how can I influence adults? And most kids, from middle school on anyhow, have heard of Greta Thunberg, and bringing in the way she has influenced adults, telling them that they have the same power, having them create public service announcements using augmented reality about the Sustainable Development Goals, incorporating the lessons that you're teaching them about science or math or history or whatever, is a really powerful way to teach. Okay. Um, Speaking of photosynthesis, okay, is you can have the kids demonstrate scientific principles. So in this case, we're demonstrating that in photosynthesis, a plant um, takes water and carbon dioxide and produces glucose. And it's not just a matter of creating scenes about photosynthesis, but you could also create scenes on how does photosynthesis affect us daily. So if you look at this last one, why do some leaves turn color in the autumn? Why do other trees stay green? Why do trees lose their leaves? How do animals get energy if animals can't produce photosynthesis? So having students write digital stories or create digital stories and relate them to the rest of the class, showing these principles really motivates them and engages them in the process of learning. Field trips are a great way of using augmented reality. So sending students out into the community, or if you're visiting a museum or another space, and having kids create augmented reality scenes based on what they're seeing. There's a um, there's a museum in the United States called the Cradle Museum of Aviation, which has a lot of exhibits about flying and about spacecraft. And what they've done is at each exhibit they have a challenge for the students. Of it might be put yourself into this scene, or develop a scene to show. Or add some trees to this scene, or add some birds to this scene. So the students, as they walk through the museum at each exhibit, create a scene in augmented reality. And when they're done, they combine all the scenes in order to reflect on what they've learned. They combine them into a presentation that they then present to their parents about what they learned on that field trip. The one in the middle is another interesting one. We had older students go to a park, and they had to come up with challenges that younger students would have to create in augmented reality at the park. So for example, um, demonstrate a carbon sink in this scene. In this scene, add some local birds. In this scene, add a couple trees that wouldn't be here. And so in each place, the students had to meet that challenge, develop their scenes. And again, at the end of the day, they put all those scenes together and made a presentation that they could share with their parents on what they learned on that field trip. And as you know, reflection is a key part of learning, and this pulls reflection together in a way that motivates the students. Um, and then and then again, I did not share sounds, and I probably should have. Um, but here, students are producing videos. On the left, a student is a video of showing how she understands, three-dimensional shapes, and how the number of sides, the number of vertices, the number of edges, and what each shape has. And then, a way of teaching multiplication is through teaching arrays. So you multiply the number of rows by the number of columns, or you count them, and that's the same as multiplication. So on the right is actually, I think, is a class from Shalini, where students are showing they understand multiplication by making a video of arrays. And in this case, the student wanted to show an array of clowns. So you have 3 rows of clowns, or you have 4 columns of clowns. So you have a total of 12 clowns. And the student explains that in the video. Oh, okay. Having students create stories and illustrate those stories. So in this case, the teacher is having the students create fairy tales. So there's a lot of fairy tale characters that come with 3D Bear, or that you can link to in 3D Bear. So right in the environment, students can create a story or a fairy tale about what could have happened in that environment. And the fairy tale might be based on a book that you're reading with the students, like what would happen if that book had taken place here. Create a scene that shows what it would be like here for that story that we're reading together. Or um, or how would you have ended this story? Show a different ending for this story, and have the students create the scenes and explain them. Social emotional learnings. Now, it's hard to get students to really examine their own emotions or their own behaviors. but it's a lot easier for them to imagine the same emotions or the same behaviors when they're projecting it onto characters. So there's emoticons in 3D Bear, to show the different emotions, and the students can develop stories in augmented reality based on what you're teaching them or what they should be learning about social emotional so their emotions and the way they should interact with other people. So you could have the children at an early age create a scene that shows when somebody might be happy, or you could say create a scene that when somebody is angry, or create a scene where somebody starts off sad and another person does something to make them happy, or create a scene that shows how you would introduce yourself to another, how a person should introduce themselves to another person. And then when you're critiquing it, you're not critiquing what the student is doing, you're critiquing what those characters are doing, and the student then internalizes what your instructions are. And we find that that's a much faster route to molding proper behavior in students. And um, so okay, I was just looking at the comments, but I guess those comments aren't for me then. So another example: history and social studies, having the students create a historical scene, or having the students create a scene that didn't happen but could have. And so one of the most powerful ways of doing this is if you're studying a city or an area or a point in time, is to have the students create a virtual museum with artifacts from that event or from that time or from that location, and then explain what's in their virtual museum to other students or to their parents. And there are lessons around that as well. Creating a scene from a book or creating a scene based on a book. And so one of the examples we did is the book Goodnight Moon. We had students create scenes from Goodnight Moon, and each student created a different scene and annotated that scene. So we recreated Goodnight Moon in augmented reality and put all those videos together into a longer video, so the class's version of Goodnight Moon. And then there was a great poem, and I forgot the author, but one of you will probably know the I guess the Boy in the Blue Pullover poem, and students have illustrated that poem in augmented reality also. And then spelling and letters. So a student made a video to show things that begin with the letter D. So this is her farmhouse, and she's got daisies and she's got ducks, and then when we run the video, there's a dog, there's a deer, and you'll see this video if you take the class starting next week also. But you can tell from the young girl's voice how proud she is of showing how much she knows about the letter D, and the different things that she put into her video. And then in this one on the right, spelling, but also teaching different aspects of spelling. So in this case, if you look, vowels are in red and consonants are in gray. So students are learning not just the spelling, but they're learning the difference between consonants and vowels. Okay, and then you'll get a copy of this also in the in the course. But these creativity challenge cards, in this case, there's 65 cards, and you give up to 5 cards to a student or a group of students, and then based on their cards, they have to tell a story. So in this case, the student got 5 cards, and the student has to create a story where the main character is a lion. The story is about cheering somebody up. It has to involve a sport. It takes place in a desert, and it has to involve food as well. So, okay, now create a story that meets all these different criteria, and create a video based on that story, and then show it off to the class. And kids love creating stories and creating videos. Okay, so that's just that just touches on the examples. And we want to go into, because when you're using 3D there in your classroom, it's like, so what's the pedagogy behind these lessons? How do I what's the philosophy behind uh, the creation of 3D Bear, and how do you apply those? So in the class, we go into this in much greater detail, but I'm sure all of you are familiar with Bloom's revised taxonomy, where there's these 6 different levels of learning, and very often in school we focus on these bottom two. When did this take place? Where did they take place? Who was involved? Or why did this take place? Or what's the explanation for this? But if we really want students to think and to be able to apply and to do deep learning, then we have to go to the higher levels of Bloom. We have to get them to apply what they're learning, to learn how to analyze and evaluate. And at the highest level, we have to teach them how to synthesize what they're learning with what they can create. And so these higher levels of learning are all taught in project or problem-based learning. And we're using that methodology. And that's really the methodology we're using in 3D Bear, because the teachers are are posing problems to the students, and the students are creating stories to solve those problems, and they're creating projects. So they're applying what they learn. They have to understand, what's the cause, what are the trends. They're thinking about, well, what's the impact, what's the result, what if this happened, what else could happen? And then they're creating something. What can I innovate? What would I change? What can I invent? What can I design? In order to fully incorporate what they're learning. And that builds a much stronger base that you can then build whatever comes next in the learning. And it's really very much more motivating to the children also. So the way we do that, and the way we teach that in 3D Bear, is really a 3-step learning process. Is the first step is engaging the students, and the whole purpose of the engagement is to let students know that this is something that they can do, and to motivate the students so that they want to continue. Once they're motivated, we have them solve real problems and learn by doing. And that's really um, you know that gets them exploring and learning on their own rather than memorizing. And then the other thing is, we want students to be able to develop fluency and to master the techniques so that we can then move on with the learning. And so in the learning, we teach you how to make the problems more advanced, how to get students to apply, evaluate, analyze, and create, which is the higher levels of Bloom. How do you get students in these lessons to reflect, to assess their own learning, to practice what they're learning, and the ultimate goal is to have them self-direct. And then these become lifetime skills. So these are the techniques that we go over in the classes. How do you use this, and then how do you use 3D Bear, or how does 3D Bear make it easier for you to teach in this way that we know is highly motivating for kids and gets them to do the work to learn. And very often we're doing this through a design thinking methodology, and we go through a very easy rubric for how you can use design thinking within your class for posing the challenge, letting having the students research and get the background information they need. How do you lead a discussion so that the students understand what they're learning and involve social learning? How do you get them to reach decisions on whatever the projects are that they're doing and what the results of them are? How do we get students to think about and compose what they're going to be producing? Then the physical building of it. And the interesting thing is, only in this 6th step, the build, are they actually using 3D Bear. In those first 5 steps, they're going through the process of learning, and they're doing that so that they can spend the time in 3D Bear building. And then they're doing that because what they really want to do is they want to brag. They want to be able to document and showcase what they've done. And so that's the last step is documenting and presenting and reflecting. So we go through those steps and relate them to the three-step pedagogy in 3D Bear during the course of the 4 sessions in the course. And these are the things that the teachers have said about um, 3D Bear and the Academy, that that it's really about engaging the kids, and 3D Bear makes it easy to get the kids into brainstorming mode and to get them to tell their stories. And and this one, the third from the bottom, which is, students start off, well, I can't do this, I'm not creative. And then it's like, yes, you are. And it's really is amazing the types of things that the kids do once they start working. Okay. And so the question is, well, like, this all sounds great, but how do I get started? Um, what, and the way you get started is, we have lessons that we've created. We have about 60 different lessons that you're going to have access to. And so you'll have access to, the lessons are organized. So you see that there's a lesson name over there on the left. You'll have a document for this. Um, what grade level the lesson is designed for, what the subject is, and then a link to the lessons. And I just want to show you here a sample lesson. And I'm going to, when this comes up better, because it's probably a little bit too small for you to see, so I'm going to make this larger. Okay. And hopefully that's a little bit easier to see. And oh my gosh, this is a lesson that Shalini wrote. Okay, so this is about finding finding shapes around us. So you see that a lesson, it's got a title, it's got a description of what's going to be in the lesson, it's got a sample of what the students are going to be producing. So in this, you're comparing 3D shapes to real items. So here on the right, you see a sphere, and a sphere is compared to what the rest of the world and you all call a football, but what in the United States we would call a soccer ball. And then full instructions for you. How do you introduce this to the class? What's something that you can show the class about what that they're producing, like in this sample video? What are the students actually going to be doing in the class? So step by step, each student is going to find 5 objects. Each student is going to take a photo of those 5 objects, etc. How are the students going to present? And then in most of these lessons, it's also, so if a student wanted to be more advanced, or you have more advanced students, or students want to try other things, what are some of the things that they could do? In this example, students can use 3D shapes in order to create sculptures. So students can create an ice cream cone out of a sphere and a cone. Students can create a rocket ship out of a cylinder and a cone. So have students try some of these if they want to get more advanced. What are the learning objectives for the course? Is there an assessment form? So most the lessons all have assessment forms that you can use, or self-assessment forms that the students can use, and then other examples of what students can produce. So here is a cylinder, which is similar to the trunk of a tree, the ball and the sphere, a cup and a half sphere, a box and a cuboid, and then a box and a different shape of a cuboid. So those are all examples. This is a really good example of these 60 different lessons that we have, that will be available to you, and Shalini will be going through as you take the course. So what happens in the course? So the course is really 4 sessions, okay? And in the first session is where you're really learning how to use augmented reality. So there's, of course, there's introduction. Who are you? What are you trying to achieve? What can you do with augmented reality? And then step-by-step instructions on how you use 3D Bear, and you'll be getting practice creating scenes and photos and videos using 3D Bear during this first session, hands-on practice, and then between the two sessions, you're going to be, creating a scene on your own and coming back to the class. And the second class, going through those scenes, we'll be going through some advanced skills in 3D Bear, and then how do you integrate 3D Bear into what you're teaching? Uh, how do you use augmented reality within project-based or problem-based learning? How do going through the different lessons that 3D Bear provides, and how do you adapt those lessons to your own class? And then getting you starting to think about how would you use 3D Bear in your class? And then the third lesson is going through the teacher tools, like how do you create your own classes? What are some lesson planning templates that 3D Bear recommends? How do you pull student voice and choice into the lessons? How do you build what in Finland they call transversal skills, but things like critical thinking, creativity, communications? How do you build those foundational skills into your lessons? And then we go through as a class, and as a class, we create a lesson based on the types of things that you all want to teach. And then um, and then once we've done that, between the third session and the fourth session, you then go through that process on your own and you create a session. And then the, the fourth session is when you all are showcasing the lessons that you created, and you're giving each other feedback on the lessons. And what you then get is, in addition to the 60 lessons that 3D Bear has, you get access to all the lessons that your fellow teachers have built. And so you have a community of other teachers that you're connected to who are also using 3D Bear that you can talk to and build on. And then from that point, your homework is to have fun and go on being great teachers. So that's what's included in the four sessions. And so I'd like to open this up to questions. And while we're at it, I'll put the QR code back up here, so that if you want to, this brings you right to the link to register.
Thank you, Mitch. I'll just quickly glance through the comments and pick up any questions that there are.
Hmm.
Just give me 1 second.
Sure. And Shalini, I think that you're answering, but you may be answering in the private chat, or at least that's what's coming out.
So Shalini is not able to put it on the chat box for some reason,
Oh,
or the comment
okay.
box for some reason, and I'm pasting it for her in the chat.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Uh, okay, I can see a question from Miss Ankita. Okay, Anamika ma'am wants to know the videos that you were sharing. How can you actually make these videos as a teacher?
So that's included right in the app. Okay. When if you as a teacher are using 3D Bear, there's a after you create your scene, there's a button that you press, and it creates the video. And as you're creating the video with the scene that you've created, you can be talking through them. And so you can create scenes from the students. The students have the same capability also. So the students then can also be creating videos that you can share with the rest of the class. Did that answer the question?
Yes. Meera Priya ma'am wants to know. I understand that augmented reality will be very much interesting for students in teaching of science and social science. Can you elaborate how to use the same in teaching of math?
Yes. Um, so I actually find that there's more uses for augmented reality in, say, elementary math than there is for advanced math. So things like number sense. And students can create word problems. So they create a scene with, let's say, two cows and three sheep. So two cows plus three sheep equals five animals. Okay. Or if they're learning to count, they can create scenes based on counting. So create a scene with five animals. Or um, if there or subtraction, if there's a total of five animals and some of them are sheep and some of them are cows, but three of them are cows, how many sheep are there? And then they create the answer in 3D Bear. Um, we also have a whole lesson. It's a storytelling lesson through computational thinking. So the students in that lesson um, have to learn how to solve problems and recognize patterns. And so there's a grandmother who's teaching her two grandchildren how to answer riddles, find problems, and it actually goes into cryptography a little bit because the students learn how to code their responses um, through creating augmented reality scenes. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. The next question that I have is what are the skills that a teacher should have in order to implement, augmented reality strategies in the classroom? Are there any specific skills that the teacher must have?
So so um, I'm a little bit struggling with that because 3D Bear is a really simple program. So in the first class, within 30 minutes, you're going to have mastered all you need to know about 3D Bear. Okay, in order to use the technology. The rest is how do you walk kids through project-based learning? So, how do you pose a problem to the children so that they become excited? How do you show them something to really engage them? How do you keep them on track? So it's really the teaching techniques that's behind using it in the classroom. The technology is just a tool. So it's like, how do you be, what do you need in order to become a good teacher using a pen? Well, the pen part of it is the least important part. It's the teaching part of it that's the key part. And my guess is that if you're here, you're already continually working on improving your craft. So you probably already have 70-80% of the teaching techniques that you need in order to use 3D Bear as problem-based learning.
Artika ma'am has a very interesting question. She's probably also a parent. She says screen time will increase once we start using 3D Bear. Is it good
Mhm.
for the students then?
So, I happen to be, well, first of all, I um I don't believe that kids should I think kids should spend virtually no screen time until they reach a certain age. So I think kids should be out doing things to a large extent. With 3D Bear, the use of 3D Bear is actually a very small part of what you're doing. Um, but it's basically, if they're doing something in 3D Bear, it's the same thing as is it wrong for kids to sit at a piece of paper and draw? Because if you like having kids sit with a piece of paper and draw, or with clay and sculpt, building something in 3D Bear is really involving the same cognitive functions as sculpture or art or making music or anything that involves creativity and the act of creation. So um, the answer is, to me, is more, how much time do you want kids to be spent creating versus doing or watching or whatever? With 3D Bear, it's really the kids are creating. So I hope that it's not really directly answering the question, like, is it good or is it bad? Because I don't think that there is a yes or no answer to that. It's more
Yeah,
complex.
right. Preeti ma'am wants to know how do we use 3D Bear, which is a virtual app, in a physical classroom, and how would it help to be used in a physical classroom? Is I think what she said.
So in the classroom, the kids have to have some type of a mobile device to use 3D Bear, but they're creating their scenes using their mobile device within the classroom. So they're either working in small groups or they're working individually. They're pointing their screen at their desk and they're building you know an environment on Mars, or they're showing their math problem right in their classroom on their device. One of the things that's interesting is that students who struggle with our normal didactic form of teaching, where a teacher is in front of the class lecturing or they have to go to a textbook, the kids who struggle with that are very often the kids who just fly with 3D Bear. And we've had cases where kids had been labeled as needing special help in education and had always been kind of at the bottom of the class, and then they're given a project with 3D Bear, and then all of a sudden their classmates are looking at them with a new appreciation, and they get a lot of confidence in themselves because the things that they're producing are really incredible.
Sylvia wants to know, does 3D Bear have inbuilt scenes, or do we have to import or upload scenes in to teach us particular concept?
Okay, and that's another really good question. So with 3D Bear, it's designed to be really easy for the kids to use and to not detract from the learning. So it comes with access to millions of objects that already exist. So if you want to get the that Martian landing module, you just look it up and boom, you can place it. If you want a dog, you just place it. If you want a bear, there's a lot of different bears, and you can place the bear that you want, the elephant that you want, the Taj Mahal if you want it, a cricket player. So all those items come with 3D Bear. Having said that, for advanced students, if students are creating objects themselves in Tinkercad or some other 3D modeling software, or if you as a teacher are playing with creating objects in one of those packages, you can import those objects into 3D Bear. But 99 and 94/100% of the people who use 3D Bear are just using the objects that they can access directly through 3D Bear. And I made that number up. It's not 99 and 94/100s. Maybe it's 80%. I don't know the actual percent.
Sure. One last question that I've continuously seen on the chat is 3D Bear free to use as a downloadable app?
That's another really good question. Yes. Um, so and the, so I have three answers that you may have guessed that I'm not good at giving like short yes or no answers. So so number one, yes, 3D Bear is a free app, and you get, if somebody downloads 3D Bear, they can use probably 60%. Well, 3D Bear comes with 500 objects, and if you that you could use if you buy if you just download the free version of 3D Bear. Okay. Um, there are features of 3D Bear with the paid version. And so, for example, as a teacher with the paid version, there's a way of setting up your students so your students have access to 100% of the capabilities. With the paid version, you have access to Sketchfab, which is the source of like 3 million objects instead of just the 500 objects that come with 3D Bear. And also with the paid version, you students and you can build your own avatars. So building your own avatar, I believe, is one of the paid features. Now, if you sign up for the class, you get a free subscription to 3D Bear for yourself and 50 students. So you get the full version of 3D Bear as part of registering for the class.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I think that brings us to the end of this session. I would like to thank, on behalf of the entire Center team, all the participants that stayed up today before the webinar, and also Mitch for waking up so early and taking this
Hmm?
webinar for us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Shalini, for also joining us today. She's part of the 3D Bear team and would be taking the master classes for whoever registers. We are also having a masterclass on using 3D Bear for you, and participants, we request you to sign up on My Center. The link of the same is on your screen right now, and you can also go to My Center and register for the masterclass. Uh, Please do fill in the feedback form that has been shared in the chat box for your reference. You will be getting the certificate once you fill the form before 9 p.m. today. Uh, Thank you, everyone. With that, we will close this session. Thank you, Mish. Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, Purvi, for taking out the time. Uh, Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much.